All right, my ATE presentation of growth by Mark McAbee. Why teaching? I became a teacher because I was the typical kid that struggled in school. I came from a low income household and school was really hard. But I learned later in life that I really love to learn and I was pretty good at it. And so I want kids to learn at an earlier age that they too can be lovers of learning. They just have to realize that the struggle is part of the process, and that's my job to help identify those areas of need and support them. I have a heart for kids. I love kids. I was a peer mentor in grade school, and just really have always had an affinity for working with children. And I'm kind of a big kid myself. I wanted to be the change that you got to see in the world. I have two kids. I wanted them to grow up in a world and a society that was conducive for what I feel are pertinent human values. There's a great Greek proverb that says, a society grows great when men plant trees whose shade they will not sit under. And that rings true to me. I'm just planting seeds for the future. My teaching context: I work at Reading STEM Academy in 6th grade. We are a charter school through the Shasta County Office of Education. We focus on mathematics and engineering. I have 25 kids. 24% of those are on IEPs. Only 4/10, yes, 4/10 are English language learners. My community: 53% of my student body is considered low income. This is pretty normal for the SES of Shasta County. 40% are direct parent involvement. These are parents that help with field trips, drive kids around, come in, volunteer in the classroom. 80% parent and classroom support. And I'm trying to go a little quicker because the first time I did this, it was a 30-minute video. So I'm trying to save you that. A 2-year journey in learning, we're going to look at my areas of need, my cycles of inquiry, what I have learned in this amazing process, and how I continue to grow, or will continue to grow. Identifying my areas of need. My first is an assessment. I wanted to better utilization of school-wide data collection and assessment. As a new teacher, we are bombarded with a bunch of information that you really don't know quite what it means. And so I really wanted to dive into, what does this information tell me? How can it help me better approach my students and help fill those holes in their learning? I always say education is like a pyramid. And if your foundation is weak or shaky, it's going to be harder to build that pyramid the further you go. And so we're going back and we're putting in those bricks. Gain a deeper understanding of the assessment data provided and its utilization, implementation of that data. When I collect all this data, what is that going to allow me to do? How can I use it? Curriculum. Finally, we were switching over to NGSS standards, and we needed to find some new science curriculum. And so this was another one of my cycles of inquiry. We're going to look at 3 cycles of inquiry today. My first cycle of inquiry is element 5.2, the collecting and analyzing assessment data from a variety of sources to inform instruction. My goal was to utilize iReady math and geometry data to inform instruction and practice to better accommodate students' needs and differentiate instruction to appropriate learning levels. I chose this because I wanted to better understand the information. I needed to know what I was looking at. I also wanted to know how I could use it to help my kids. Like, what does this tell me? And as a new teacher, I had no idea. And that's what this ILP really allowed me to do, was dive into what that means and how to use it. So my growth, I was at an exploring emerging level when I first started. I would like to say that now I'm at applying level. I'm using this data regularly to analyze my students and remediate instruction. The evidence I collected. Beginning of the year assessment data. This is really interesting. When we first came in, we gave a pre-assessment in iReady and CVM. And iReady was the one that I was primarily looking at and utilizing for my intervention. This is the national norm where we placed at the beginning of the year. This was in September of 2018. We were at the 35th percentile. I began to do small group intervention, and I'm really proud of this. I formulated a protocol procedure, which if you click on the hyperlink here, which will be in the slide that I will send you guys, you can see the actual protocol procedure printed out, and there's a slide later that shows it as well. The students are grouped homogenously. So let's say that they were struggling in geometry at they placed at a 3rd grade level. I would group 5 to 6 kids all grouped at the same level in geometry, or if it's algebraic thinking or numbers and operations, I'd group them together so that we could then remediate the iReady lessons and work through them in small group one-on-one intervention. Administrate grade level pretest. remediate instruction, begin intervention through small group, direct instruction. And surprisingly enough, direct instruction seems to really help students. Small group intervention and finding their areas of need and focusing on those seem to really help, but we'll let the numbers speak for themselves. Administer grade level post tests and analyze data for growth patterns. This is the beginning of the year. They did fairly well on this. This was a mid-6th grade assessment that I gave them on graphing polygons and a coordinate plane. My overall mean for them was at 80%. I was really impressed with that. I had one student get 100%. I was shocked. But you could see that some of them were struggling a little bit more, 56%, 67, 78%. Two of them got 89s. We administered, this is our post test. Now this is just 3 months later after 4 weeks of intervention. We remediated the lessons. 4 weeks later, we gave them the same exact test. Yes, there is a small possibility that they could just remember the questions from a month prior, but I'm going to take that for what it is, because if they were able to retain that information for 4 weeks, good for them. 96%. We grew 14% in this specific geometry-based iReady lessons over a course of a 4-week direct intervention. And so this strategy is actually not only being implemented now in my classroom for our academy lessons, which is our early morning intervention for students that are struggling, but it's also being implemented in other classrooms like 5th grade, and they might even utilize it in 7th and 8th. And I had a co-teacher come in this year in 1st grade and really look at how I was implementing these things so she could better help identify her students' needs. So this is my crowning jewel. I'm most proud of this because the analysis of the data allowed me to better understand how I could use these tools to help my kids. I could pinpoint precisely what they needed, focus on those needs, and it helped them grow. It helped them grow so much that we went from the 36th percentile to the 49th. I was very, very proud of that. And I still am proud of this, and it works. And so that's kind of my big jewel for this whole ATE thing, and the fact that we're using it school-wide is a big deal to me. But we'll look at some other things that I did. Cycle of Inquiry 2, Element 5.4, using assessment data to establish learning goals and plan differentiated modified instruction. I'm collecting a bunch of different formal and informal assessments now for language arts. We focused on math. I know how to use that data. Now let's look at language. Let's look at English, and let's see what we can figure out. How can we help students with their reading and writing and comprehension, their multiple choice reading comprehensions, and all those things that we need to focus on in these assessments. So it allowed me to accommodate students by targeting specific areas of needs per student. And then I started to even modify them even greater instead of small group. I could then pinpoint what students need as individuals and modify instruction for the individual. My growth, I was at exploring level when I started. I'm now at the applying level. My evidence that I collected, again, I used the beginning of the year surveys. We used CBM, the CAS scores from the previous year. When we took our 2018, we were at 35%, kind of just like with our mathematics. We began, I sent home a home reading survey, excuse me, I was jumping ahead. This is an informal reading survey. I sent it to parents. This allows me to gauge, how do parents see their kids? Or do they think their kids are great readers and maybe they're not? Do they think their kids are bad readers and maybe they're okay? I don't know. That's why I reached out. I had 18 of my 25 parents actually fill out this survey. It was a Google form. This is what it looks like, and return it. It was just 4 basic questions that you would fill in the blanks. They were drop-down menus because I know as a parent, things have to be quick. That's why I'm trying to speed through this. Read Naturally intervention in Spalding. I was fortunate enough, my administrative support team and my mentor were great in helping me come up with a strategy to implement all of these things that I wanted to do, because small group intervention is hard when you're trying to teach a self-contained classroom. So they actually were able to find me an aide that would come in twice a week, and she would implement either the small group or some type of Spalding or Read Naturally intervention that helped identify these areas of need and help the students grow through that direct, explicit instruction and intervention per student or per small group. And it worked really well. As you can tell, once again, we went from the 35th to the 44th percentile by the end of the year. I was very, very pleased with that. We're almost at the top of that bell curve. So that was my second ILP that I worked through, and it really all was just in the collection of the data. My mentor is fantastic. She worked very well with me, and she was very supportive and helpful in helping me come up with these strategies and these implementations. She's also the 7th and 8th grade science and math teacher. And so it's great for us to be able to collaborate. And that's something I took away, is the importance of collaboration in this as well. Helped me grow exponentially. The final cycle of inquiry I just want to look at real quick is my implementation of the my NGSS science standard. Element 3.5, using and adapting resources, technologies, and standards aligned instructional material, including adopted material to make subject matter accessible to all students. My goal was to find an NGS science standard aligned curriculum for my classroom because mine was outdated. That's pretty self-explanatory. We needed to find something new. So I sat down with my mentor, who once again was my 6th and 7th grade science and math teacher, and we discussed, what are we looking for? My initial level, I was at exploring, and now I would say I'm at applying. I'm using the new curriculum. I love it. It's fantastic. It's called STEM Scopes. They have great hands-on labs, but there's a caveat to that we will talk about. My evidence I collected. So mentor and administrative research on available NGS Align. We sat down for a good 2-3 months, looked at the different things that were available, tried a couple of them out internally in the classroom. The parameters that we had aligned, NGSS, of course, technology-based, because we are a technology school, that's important. Hands-on lab work, super crucial. Kids love to just do experiments. I love doing experiments, so it's fun for all of us, and it really immerses them in the learning. Cohesive learning for multi-year use. The fact that I'm implementing it in 6th grade helps in 7th and 8th because they're familiar with the format. Assessments for data and student learning analysis. It's got a great online component that I can analyze data, and I have learned to love my data. STEM Scopes classroom implementation. I implemented STEM Scopes internally in January of 2020. We spent the beginning of 2019 looking for the specific curriculum. We found it. I implemented it in January. Several hands-on labs. They're really fun. We did the growth cycle of plants. We looked at human anatomy. We did cells. We did all these fun little workshops internally. Plus, they had some computer-based reading and assessments they would take to just check for comprehension, which was great. We were just getting in the groove of learning how this worked, and then COVID affected the classroom labs and interaction as our school was directed into distant learning. But what I'm fortunate about is the online component was extremely useful in continuing lessons in implementing NGS science standards via distant learning platforms. We just don't get the labs. I have to send them either videos of myself doing the lab, or I have to send them videos of someone else doing a similar lab that is within the context of what they're learning about. Overall, I'm very happy with the program. I cannot wait to continue to grow my knowledge and use of it next year when we come back and my kids are back in my classroom and everything's back to normal. I'm so excited. I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, knock on wood. By continuous growth, I plan on continuing to collaborate because collaboration is something that I learned is so vital in this process. Collaborating with mentors, peers, admin, just talking to other teachers, not only for the advice and information you can get, but realizing that you're not in this alone, that other teachers are going to have struggles. Other teachers struggle just like you do. Other teachers sometimes get lost in all the data and the curriculum, and that's perfectly acceptable, giving yourself the grace to move forward and realize that you're doing something that's amazing and good, hopefully for society. Administrative analysis and feedback. I'm going to continue to work with my admin hand in hand. We have a great administrative support team here that really is open about sharing the information. They say, hey, here's where you're at. Here's where you can improve. These are things you're good at. These are things you can work on. This is why I chose to focus on data collection, was because that was an area of weakness for me. My classroom management skills, I feel, are decent. I have previous experience in teaching music and science. I have a really good rapport with my students. And so as far as management wise, I didn't feel I needed to grow in that. Where I needed to grow was in the analysis of this information and better helping my kids learn. Finally, I'm going to continue my education. I'm going to be enrolling in the Master's of Education course through Simpson. I'm going to get my master's in math. I have a multiple subject credential right now. I want to get my master's in mathematics. Thank you guys for the 12 credits. That was awesome. I really appreciate that. That helps move me forward in my goal towards meeting this part of my continued education. I'll also continue to enroll in professional development classes. Those are super vital. I've had them in Project Lead the Way and Study Sync and these other formats that I use that really help me grow as an educator. My final thoughts, there's a lot, but the ATE program has been a great learning experience for me. I've enjoyed my last 2 years. It helps me analyze and identify my strengths and weaknesses as an educator. and be able to focus on those. It gave me the time that I needed to focus. It also allowed me to work with my colleagues. It polarized that importance. We're a team, and we have to continue to work together for the betterment of our school and for these kids. It gave me the time and resources to dive into the immense data that I collected by school, or that's collected by schools, and to better understand the important role that it plays. Again, as a new teacher, I didn't even know how to use this when I first started, and now I feel like I understand where it's coming from, what it's used for, and how to really implement it in my classroom so that I can better suit my kids from year to year. I am thankful for the resources and support over the last 2 years from both the ATE program, my administrative staff, my amazing mentor. I cannot say enough about how phenomenal she was. She helped me at every single turn and really was the support that I needed throughout this whole entire thing. And all this just helped mold me into a better educator. So thank you guys for your time. I hope you really enjoyed. There's my contact information. Should you have any questions, please email or call me. And hopefully this video was a little bit shorter than the last one. Thank you again.